Hey, Coach Robert here. We're going to do something in this video that most kids, if you've worked with me, this is something we cover pretty early on because it's so important. And that's how to win with just a king and a queen versus a king. A lot of times you get to the end of the game and you only have a piece or two extra. And so if you have a queen advantage, this is a game that you should win. And so we want to go over how do you make sure that you do it right so that you win. And it turns out it's not that hard. And you just have a couple of little rules that you have to remember. And we're going to start with some of the ideas, what doesn't work, and then we're going to show you how to do it. Okay? So, what we have here is I've got on the board two kings, the white king, the black king, and the white queen. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is you cannot checkmate the black king in this situation unless you get him to the edge of the board. So let me show you what I mean. So if I have this queen and I stick it here, all right? Well, this queen is attacking the king, is attacking the square behind the king, so he's in check. But notice the king still has two squares he can run away to, right? If I had instead taken the queen and put her here, notice we're attacking the king and the square behind, and we're attacking along the column and the row, but there's still two squares the king can escape to. So no matter what you do, you can't checkmate the king in the edge of the board. Instead, you have to have the king, you can't checkmate him in the center, you have to checkmate along the edge. And it usually looks something like this, where now there are no escape squares further away like we had before in the middle of the board. We're still attacking the same squares, but the squares the queen wouldn't be attacking are off the edge of the board, and the king can't go off the edge of the board, so that's checkmate. Check and no way of getting away, and the king can't capture the queen, right? That's not allowed because we've got this king here that is protecting it. Okay, so let's take a look at, so how do we get to this position? We're going to start from a position like this, and the idea is that we're not going to check the king until we give checkmate. So there are three steps to this. The first is to first create a box around the king. The second is follow the king until the king reaches an edge. Then we're going to hold the king on the edge while we bring in our king for help, and then finally deliver checkmate. Okay, so those four things. Did I say three earlier? Well, it's four. All right, so first we create a box. So the way I create a box is I find a square that I can put my queen that is a knight's move away from the king. So we've got the black king here. And so if I look at all the squares that are knight's move away, I look for one that the white queen can reach that's going to create the smallest box around the king. So I don't know if you noticed, but these two are the only ones that this white queen can reach from here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take the queen and I'm going to bring her up to c5 here. Now if you notice, that means the queen is covering everywhere this direction and across the fifth rank and up and down the C file. That creates a smaller box than if I had put her on C3. That would have been a slightly bigger box. So this king can only move to safe squares, right? You can't go to any place that the queen or king is attacking. And so right now, the king is going to have to go towards one of the two edges, right? A chessboard has four edges, right? So it's got to move towards one of those two because the queen is preventing the king from going to the other two edges, right? So the king can't reach the top edge, the king can't reach the left edge. It has to go to the right edge or the bottom edge here. So we're going to make a move for the king. And here's the thing: once you get your queen a knight's jump away, right? Whatever your opponent's king does, you copy. So if the opponent's king moves to the right, you move to the right. If the opponent's king moves diagonal and down, you move diagonal and down. Whatever they do, you do. You just follow along. If your opponent's king moves here to the down and left, you move down and left. All right, so once your opponent's king reaches the edge of the board, that's when you stop following and you just move to trap them along the edge of the board. And so in this case, we're going to move the queen to right here, to e2. But I'm done following because now the queen has trapped the king on the edge. So remember, the first thing we did was we put a box around the king, then we followed the king until it was to the edge of the board. We trap the king on the edge while we move our king into position. We're to step 3. So now, while the black king is stuck, notice the black king cannot move to any of these squares that I just highlighted. So he is stuck on these 2 squares. All he can do is move back and forth, back and forth. So while he moves back and forth, I'm going to bring my king over to join the fun. And the moment my king gets to this position where it's across from the corner, see how it's 2 squares away from the corner, right? Once the king reaches that position, I have checkmate on the next move. So black moves, and then it is checkmate, okay? So let's see some other ways this might happen. Let's back up a little bit. Okay, so what if the black king just keeps going sideways? Okay, remember I said as soon as the king reaches the edge of the board, you just trap the king, right? If I moved the queen over, then the king's going to come off the edge. I don't want to do that. I want to go ahead and trap the king on the edge, so I've got to look at all the squares the queen can do that are 1 row away from the edge. And there are 3 moves I have, right? But 2 of those moves, the king can just capture. All right, so I've eliminated those 2, so I need to move my queen here, right here. All right, so I've got the king trapped in a slightly bigger box, right? So this king can step up towards the queen, but I'm just going to keep moving my king in closer and closer. And the moment I can, I'm going to put my king directly across from my opponent's king so that no matter where my opponent's king goes, it's checkmate on the next move. Okay, so that's another way. If they go straight to the edge, just trap them as soon as you can. So let's look at one more example that you have to be careful of. We'll see. The king comes here. And this is what people get confused with. We're doing that, whatever the king does, the queen does the same thing. What if the king goes to the corner? If the king goes to the corner, you have to be careful because they've stepped to an edge. It is a corner, it's a special edge. It's both edges, right? So you can't just follow it because we stop following it when it hits the edge. We look for how do we trap it on the edge. And so I have to look at all the moves the queen has to trap it on the edge. Well, there is this move and this move that will trap it along the bottom edge. There is this move and this move that will trap it along the side edge. Well, 2 of those moves are okay, and 2 of them don't work. Can you figure out which 2 don't work? All right, hopefully you notice the 2 that get closest to the king don't work, because at that point, that is a draw, because the queen is attacking every square around the king, but the king is not in check, so it is a stalemate. So instead, I have to use either this move up to g5 or this move down to e2. Either one of those is okay. I would rather do this move to g5 because if I put my queen on e2, that means the king has to walk around the queen. So if I move to g5, now I've got the king stuck because the queen is covering all these squares. And so I just keep moving my king until he's right across from my opponent's king. And then we have checkmate. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand how to checkmate with a king and queen. Just like with any other sport, if you want to do it well in a game, you have to drill, you have to practice. So there are things like Chess Kid where you can set up this position or use a workout position where you practice this. Or you can get with some friends or with some family and set up the board and you just practice over and over and over again. Obviously, it's best to practice this with the computer or somebody who's skilled because that way you can make sure that you're playing against somebody making the best moves. But practicing this over and over again is what's going to help you accomplish it in a game. Okay, so that was the king and queen mate, and the kiss of death is what this is called when the queen is right against the king like this. So like I said, if you've worked with me in the past, you're probably familiar with it. But if this is new to you, then great, get some practice. And this is something that's always good to practice, even if you've done it before. All right, I will see you in some other video.